Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at onpurposely.com.
I'll never forget we played with this band that was literally like forwardly satanic. We went on right after them, and I remember right after that, I'm thinking, what am I going to say after that? And I remember just walking up on stage, and right before our last song is usually where I would talk, and I just said, guys, I just want you to know that we don't believe what the first band talked about, and that's okay. And they have free will to believe whatever they want to believe, but we believe in a God that loves you for who you are, and he's going to meet you exactly where you were at. And I remember just saying something really simple, and we had like 2 or 3 people that walked up to us after the show, and they're like, tell me more about this Jesus character. I think people are so hungry for something that's real, and authentic, and you can give them that, which is the gospel. Like, I think they just crave that, and they long to know more about it.
That's Jordan Feliz, and he joins you today on the Passion Meets Purpose podcast. The passion part is basically the gifts and talents that it's stuff that comes natural to you. You think, God gave me an extra dose of being good at this or being interested in this. And then the purpose part is how you use those gifts and talents to give back to the world. But sometimes it takes a little while to figure all that out. So let's begin our conversation with Jordan Feliz on what he did prior to making music. Okay, Jordan, so I hear that before you had songs on the radio, you drove for Uber.
I did. Yeah. That was kind of a crazy time, but I started when we first moved to Nashville. I actually valeted, like I parked cars, and when right after I signed to Centricity, like my writing schedule started getting fuller and started writing more songs and doing more things with music, so I needed more like of a flexible job, and so I ended up doing Uber, and I ended up winning a car, which is kind of weird, but that was a random thing that happened.
How do you win a car from driving for Uber?
So basically, it would be like if you were texting me like, hey, I really need to make some extra cash or whatever, do you know of a job or anything? Then I could just text you and say, well, if you sign up for Uber, then I'll get a referral reward or something like that. Usually it was like $100 or something. Well, in the month of May, they had that going, and you would get a submission for every person that you got to come drive for Uber. And I had one person, and literally they called, I think, 160 drivers, and they had them all come to this place in Nashville, and they're like, hey, just come prepared to win a car if I don't know, they had like some prep things for us or whatever.
Come prepared to win a car.
Yeah. And so it was like, okay, but there's so many of us. And I remember there was a dude that was walking around. He was like, yeah, I had 50 submissions. And I'm like, oh man, that guy's going to win. And they're like, all right, well, it's time to go outside. We're going to auction off the Prius. And so I was like, okay. And I'm just expecting to walk outside and watch somebody else win a car. And literally some dude walks out with this giant gold piece of paper with my name on it. And he was like, Jordan Feliz, you won a Prius. And I was like, what? And it was just amazing. It was such a cool, it was a huge blessing, because honestly, my wife and I, in literally like 7 weeks was our due date for our first little girl, and we only had one car. And so it was just a huge blessing to have the car. And so, yeah.
And I heard that right, that like some dude had like 50 referrals, so that's kind of like 50 raffle tickets to your one.
Yes. Yeah.
You had one shot.
Just one. Yep.
You need to write a song about that.
I know, right? It's just all about like God's favor or something.
Speaking of, your wife does hair.
She does, yes.
Does she do your hair?
She does. She does my hair, and it's actually been kind of weird. So she actually quit her job in January and stopped doing hair just to be a stay-at-home mom, but she's continued doing hair. So she actually just cut my hair a couple days ago.
I was going to say, like, to quit your job doing hair and be a stay-at-home mom is like the idea in theory, until all of your friends are like, hey, do you mind still?
Exactly. Oh man, that's like my wife's entire life right now is text messages like, so I really miss you and I went to this other stylist. So can you come and like cut my hair at my house and I'll pay you? And Jamie's like, maybe. Like she's too sweet to say no, but I don't think she wants to do it.
Got it. The hairstylist who couldn't say no.
Yeah, seriously.
You toured for years with a rock band.
Yeah. Yeah, that's oh my gosh, it feels like a different life. But I started touring when I was 17 years old, and I got approached by a band that was from a town that's about 30 minutes from my hometown, and they needed a singer, and they were like, "Would you like to do this?" And um I just felt like God was just saying, "Do it." And so I passed up on quite a few college opportunities, and my parents were super not happy about it. But I just really felt like God had His hand on it, and so it was actually kind of like a metal band, and so we got to go into like venues and talk about the gospel on stage, and it kind of created like this fire in my heart and just passion for talking about Jesus on stage and sharing the gospel with people. And now here I am.
Tell me more about that. For a person who's listening thinking the gospel at a venue that's not a church, go ahead and open someone's eyes as to how much Holy Spirit is going on there.
Well, we used to like kind of have this thing where because all five of us in the band, we were all believers. And so like it's biblical where three or more are gathered, And so for us, we've thought we could just bring the church into the venue as much as like I mean, we believe God is everywhere. And so the thing is we would just I mean, and it's shocking how much we would like walk into a venue and it would just be like I'll never forget we played with this band that was literally like so forwardly satanic in like all their music and stuff. Like they would like do scary stuff during the show, stuff that was like, oh my gosh, like what is this? And I remember playing that night and after them we went on right after them and I remember right after that I thinking, what am I going to say after that? And I remember just walking up on stage, and right before our last song is usually where I would talk. And I just said, guys, I just want you to know that we don't believe what the first band talked about, and that's okay. And they have free will to believe whatever they want to believe. But we believe in a God that loves you for who you are, and He's going to meet you exactly where you were at. And I remember just saying something really simple, and we had like two or three people that walked up to us after the show, and they're like, tell me more about this Jesus character. And it's funny because there are people we would run into that had never even heard of Jesus before. They had just heard of like God. And you're like, how do you live in America and you don't know who Jesus is? You're just like, that's shocking. But I think people are so hungry for something that's real, and authentic. And when you can give them that, which is the gospel, like I think they just crave that and they long to know more about it.
How did you transition from that band to what you do now?
So I basically right after the band wrapped up, I took a job at a church as a worship leader, and I
What
kind of
a stark contrast.
yeah, it
Like,
was
what was that resume like? What was that meeting like? Like, you walk in, I'd like to be your worship leader. Where did you play last? And you tell them.
yeah. I tell them, oh, we actually just broke up in Denver, Colorado, playing this hole in the wall. I think it was called the Black Widow Club or something super weird. But it helped because so the new head pastor that had just started the church, who him and the worship pastor were the guys who took me out to lunch. He used to be in a Christian rock band called Dogwood back in the day. And so he was like, I love that you're grungy and all this other stuff. And he's like, you should totally just come. It fits the theme of our church. And, I just think it'd be great. And I never thought of myself as a worship leader, but over that year, I just fell in love with that. And I also felt like God had just started kind of giving me songs, and I didn't really know what to do with them, and I didn't know what that was about. And I got a phone call from a friend who's now my manager, and he was like, "Hey, um, I'm gonna fly you to Nashville, and I want you to write some songs with some people, and I believe that you could do something in Christian music," which I had never even dreamed of. I kind of grew up listening to CCM, so I just never thought that was a realistic thing for me though in my life. And went to Nashville and fell in love with Nashville. Long story short, my wife and I ended up moving a year later, and from day one, literally from day one, we just God was opening doors. I met a lady. Her name is Jennifer Deibler, and we were walking down a road.
FFH?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I had to go back into the catalog of my
Yes.
brain cells.
Yes. So we met her within the first like 3 hours of being in Nashville, and literally walking down the road, and this lady behind us just goes, "You guys look like you're in a band." And one of my best buds had moved with me and my wife, and he was like, "No, this guy's just, he's a songwriter. He's so good. You gotta check his stuff out." And I'm like, "David, please stop," because I'm so not that person. And she was like, "Well, I'm gonna give you my email. Send your demo to my husband and I." And I was like, "Cool." And she was like, "We used to do Christian music. We were in a band called FFH." I was like, "Oh, no big deal. Like, you were in FFH. My parents have like every one of your records. Are you serious?"
Oh, I bet they loved that.
She was like, just totally loved it. And so I was like, "That's crazy." And so,
I mean, did you tell her you knew it meant far from home?
no, I had no idea about anything. Like, I was just so like in my own head. I was like, "I can't believe this is happening." And like, I think 3 months into moving there, she had like sent my work tapes and stuff to like record labels and done all this stuff. And we started getting like emails from people, and we're like, "How is this happening?" And they're like, "Oh, Jennifer Deibler." I'm like, "That's crazy." Like, that's so the Lord, because it's like, usually, I mean, if I handed you a demo on the street, you'd be like,
"Yeah,
that's adorable. Hey, we're just going to stick it in our car," or whatever.
The Passion Meets Purpose podcast is made possible thanks to our friends at Northwest University. Ensuring a welcoming spirit for you at Northwest University, your tuition remains lower than all other Christian schools in Washington. And NU is all in on tech. They've got a brand new state-of-the-art technology studio, and majors include UX design, data science, video production, audio production, and computer science. This is in addition to an already diverse offering of business, nursing, education, sciences, communication, psychology, music, and humanities. Northwest University is a faith-based community, Christ-centered in all they do. At Northwest University, your future isn't canceled. It's just beginning. Well, you are pretty much the poster child then for it doesn't normally happen like this.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Because after that, I mean, a lot of people know you from your song, The River, which went straight to #1. It was your first single sent to radio. So why don't you walk somebody through a typical conversation that like your manager or your label would have to manage your expectations? Like, "Hey, new artist, here's your song. Don't get your hopes up," right? Did anybody have that conversation
Oh my
with you?
gosh. Yeah. Like thousands of times. I mean, I think what's funny is nobody had to tell me, because honestly, I'd been doing this for so long and touring, and where I came from touring wise, it was like van and trailer, like, "Hey, we've got a 12-hour drive tonight. Nobody's sleeping," like, or it's just, we don't have a hotel room for, 6 days, and we're just going to take showers out and like out in the trees somewhere, and like, it's just crazy. And so I was like, "Oh man, I have no expectations." But I really did start feeling like the Lord, whenever we started writing music, he just, he called me to something that in my mind felt new, even though it wasn't. But he just asked me to pray over the songs. And so I started really just praying over every song that I wrote. And songs started really like coming out of that as like, "Oh, this one has something special on it," or "This one feels really cool." And it was funny because I didn't think The River, I thought people were actually going to hate The River. I remember like Chris Love from Centricity calling me and saying, "Hey, we're going to send The River out as a first single," and me being like, "Okay, cool." But like deep down in myself, I was like, "People are going to hate it. They're going to think it's so aggressive," and all these other things. And it's amazing that, that was literally the first song I prayed over, and just seeing the way that people have just fallen in love with it. And I mean, hearing stories that like, I mean, it's saved people's lives. It's
Wow.
saved people's marriages. I'm like, man, all from this simple truth, of just the fact that we are able to like speak with the Holy Spirit. We're able to access that living water every day. I think that's just such a cool thing. It's been a super humbling experience, to
Mhm.
go through it, and talking to the label and everything, and all their expectations were, down here. And so mine were even lower. So to now have this other thing happen was just, I mean, it's just been unreal.
Yeah, I mean, it skyrocketed to number 1. It stayed there for 10 weeks, um, and which doesn't often happen for a new artist. And then, I I'm sure a manager or a label person would be like, "Don't practice your acceptance speech for the Dove Award-winning New
Oh
Artist of the
gosh.
Year,"
Oh my gosh.
And yet all of a sudden, they call your name.
Oh my goodness. That was actually hilarious, because that was a I told you so moment for my wife. And I've been telling people about this because my wife and I were driving to the Doves, and you know, my wife was like, "Did you like plan anything?" And I was like, "Babe, no. Like, I'm not gonna win. Like, there's just no way." I had it in my mind that I knew who was gonna win. There was a certain person on that list, and I was like, "That person's gonna win." And I was like good with it. I'm like, "Man, I don't need this award to like have something in my heart feel like, oh yeah, this is totally great." So I literally just didn't practice, didn't have anything to say. And so when they called my name, I literally like stood up and I was smiling, and I just looked over at my wife, and my wife just went like, and she just had this look, and she gave me a hug, and she kissed me on the cheek, and she just whispered in my ear. She goes, "Told you." And that was it. I just walked up to the podium and was like, I really just did not think that was gonna happen. So it was, I mean, it's so flattering, and I was just so humbled by it, and to be, I mean, I mean, I feel like all the new artists that are emerging are just so incredible, and they're incredible people, and they have incredible hearts, and they're so talented. And so to even just be on that list was awesome, and to win was like, wow, that's crazy. But it was a very surreal moment.
My favorite part of the whole thing is that your wife got an "I told you so" moment. What's her name?
Yeah, Jamie.
Jamie. I love it. Well, speaking of family, your dad manages an at-home store in Tennessee.
Yes. That's
Tell
amazing. I love that this is a question.
You haven't been asked this one.
Never in my entire life.
Well, then let's talk about it.
All right.
Hit me with it. What's an at-home store?
So it's basically like almost a Costco for furniture
Excellent.
and like decorative, like home decor stuff. So they have like couches, and instead of, I'm trying to think, like maybe you go to like West Elm, or you go to like Pier 1 or Ethan Allen or somewhere, and they've got like a selection of like 10 chairs, and they're all like $500, Or you go to At Home, they've got a selection of like 350 chairs, and they're all like $90. So it's like kind of like almost like wholesale-y, but they have like great stuff. And
What's the best deal there that nobody knows about?
the best deal. Oh man, but they have great pillows. I know that. I don't know.
If your dad hears this, he's going to be like, "Son."
He's gonna be like, "Listen, man, I'm gonna send you the inventory sheet. You got to study that so you can answer these questions better next time."
For someone that wants to check it out and maybe order online, where do they go? Jordan.
Athome.com. Isn't that what Google is for? Just hey, go to google.com, and then you just type in "at home," and then that will pull
At
up.
Home, Tennessee. Okay.
Oh my gosh, that's the best.
Worst place you've ever slept while on the road?
Oh, it's hard for me to answer this because there's been so many. Probably the worst place I've ever slept on the road. So I slept in the back of a van on the top of there's a base cabinet called an Ampeg 810, and there was a piece of cardboard over the top of it, and I slept on that with a blanket over me, and we were literally somewhere in like Virginia, and it was snowing outside, so it was just freezing cold, and we didn't have money to like keep the van on, so we were just freezing in there, and I slept on there, and that was probably pretty bad.
What's like the square footage of the thing? Were you cuddled like in the fetal position?
Kind of, yeah. It was kind of easier. I remember just sleeping on my back. Like that was the easiest way to do it because it's just like laying on hardwood floors or something, you know.
What do you think about in those moments as you're trying to fall asleep?
Why am I doing this? Why can't I just go home? You know, I don't know, just so many different things. But I mean, I think it also, I mean, there's moments like that that just build so much character for like being grateful for the process of getting to where I'm at right now and today. You know, the fact that we get to sleep on a tour bus instead of sleeping on a floor or in a hotel room or, you know, I mean, we never got hotel rooms. So it was always like at a host home, maybe where they'd let us sleep on the floor, you know, or, you know, we would just sleep in the van and, you know, so I think it just puts a lot of perspective and character into what we get to do now. And I'm really thankful for those times.
I'm thankful for it too. And also, it shows that, you know, if your bus ever breaks down or you're in a pinch, you know what you got to do.
Hey, yep, for the side of the road and let's go sleep in the desert or something, I guess.
Oh, Jordan Feliz, that's our time. Thank you so much. I think my favorite part is just the way that you pray over your songs. And that's something that you didn't come up with that. You just felt like the Lord impressed it on your heart.
Yeah. Oh man, thank you. Yeah, it's been a huge thing for me and even my entire family and our entire crew, you know? Like cuz I think now that I've spread that onto everybody that we work with, like I feel like that's a huge part of what we do now and I feel like it was so God breathed. So
Hmm.
it's been amazing to see the blessing and all that and to also just even if there isn't a blessing, it's kind of just nice to do.
Yeah, it's very countercultural, right?
Yeah.
Normally an artist could take credit for, well, yeah, I wrote a hit song. And it's
Ye-
like, no, I prayed over this because it's the Lord that does the work.
Oh man, that's so good. So literally right on the nail. It's amazing. It's exactly what I would have said. Love it. Thanks for having me.
Our thanks to Jordan Feliz and his team with Centricity, including Chris Love, who brought him out for the visit. Thank you to Rebecca Beckett and Luke Swanberg, our content producers, and Scott Caro, our wonderful audio producer. Couldn't do it without him. Couldn't do it without you. Obviously, thank you so much for listening to this episode, and you know the drill. I'm going to see you again in 2 weeks.